You ever feel like you're constantly fighting a silent battle, where the people who are supposed to be your biggest cheerleaders are actually your toughest critics, always finding a way to dismiss your passions? If you've ever had someone look at your deepest joy and just shrug it off as a silly hobby, then you might just understand the quiet rage that simmered inside me for years. Because for me, that silly hobby wasn't just a pastime. It was my soul, my escape, my true calling, and my in-laws. Well, they were the masters of polite dismissal, constantly insisting I give it up for what they called a proper life. Trust me, you won't believe what happened when that silly hobby ended up winning an Olympic gold medal. So, if you've ever been made to feel small for daring to dream big, hit that like and subscribe button. This is my story: the clinking of crystal glasses, the hushed murmur of polite conversation, the oppressive scent of roast beef and judgment. That was Sunday dinner at the Sterling household, my husband David's family. And for years, it felt like being trapped in a golden cage, impeccably furnished but utterly suffocating. My in-laws, Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, Richard and Eleanor, though I rarely called them by their first names, were the epitome of old money, conservative values, and an unwavering belief in their own superior judgment. They lived in a sprawling mansion filled with antiques and unspoken rules, and their lives revolved around corporate boardrooms, exclusive country clubs, and the meticulous maintenance of their social standing. I, Sarah, was, in their eyes, an anomaly. I was an architect by profession, successful and driven, but my true passion lay elsewhere: competitive equestrian show jumping. It wasn't just a sport, it was an art, a dance between human and horse, a pursuit that demanded discipline, strength, and an almost spiritual connection with another living being. It was expensive, time-consuming, and utterly consumed my free time. And to the Sterlings, it was nothing more than a silly hobby. "Sarah, dear," Eleanor Sterling would begin, her voice sweet as poison ivy. During one of these torturous dinners, she'd dab her lips with a linen napkin, her gaze sweeping over me with an air of polite disapproval. "Are you still spending all your weekends at that dusty old stable, you know? David mentioned you missed the club's charity gala last month for one of your competitions." Richard Sterling, David's father, would nod gravely, his gaze piercing. A man of David's caliber needs a wife who is present, Sarah, supporting his career, nurturing your home. These equestrian pursuits, while quaint, are hardly conducive to the kind of life we expect for David. David, my loving, well-meaning husband, would shift uncomfortably in his seat, caught between his unwavering love for me and his lifelong conditioning to appease his parents. "Mom, Dad, it's just Sarah's passion. She enjoys it." His voice would be low, almost apologetic. "Passion is all well and good, David," Eleanor would respond, a dismissive flick of her perfectly manicured hand. "But there's a difference between a hobby and an obsession. When it starts taking away from your responsibilities, from your family." She'd trail off, letting the unspoken accusation hang heavy in the air. This was their constant refrain. Every conversation, every casual remark, every holiday gathering circled back to my silly hobby. It wasn't just show jumping. It was anything that deviated from their narrow definition of a proper wife. My career as an architect, though respected, was deemed less important than David's. My creative pursuits were tolerated only if they fit neatly into a pre-approved box. But show jumping, it was too wild, too physically demanding, too public, and entirely too consuming for a Sterling daughter-in-law. I loved David deeply. He was kind, intelligent, and in many ways, an escape from my own conventional upbringing. But his inability to stand up to his parents, to truly defend me against their subtle but relentless attacks, created a painful rift in our marriage. He would try, yes, but a lifetime of being conditioned by the formidable Sterlings meant his efforts often crumbled under their unwavering disapproval. He wanted peace, and for them, peace meant my complete conformity. I remembered one particularly stinging conversation. I had just won a regional Grand Prix, a significant achievement that qualified me for national trials. I called David, elated, expecting a shared moment of triumph. "That's wonderful, Sarah," he exclaimed, genuinely happy for me. I'll tell Mom and Dad. An hour later, my phone rang. It was Eleanor. Sarah, dear, we heard about your little win. Very energetic. But darling, really, do you think this is what you should be focusing on? Those national trials are an enormous commitment. The travel, the training schedule, it's simply not practical. You're a married woman now, with a home to manage, a husband whose demanding career needs your full support. Wouldn't it be better to channel that energy into, say, planning the annual club charity ball, or perhaps redecorating the guest wing? Something more fitting. My exhilaration evaporated, replaced by a familiar chill. It was never enough. My successes were always minimized, reframed as distractions, or opportunities for them to assert their control. My heart ached, not just for myself, but for the quiet dreams I felt I was constantly being pressured to abandon. I often escaped to the stables, to the comforting scent of hay and horseflesh, to the powerful, rhythmic thud of hooves on dirt. My horse, a magnificent warm-blood mare named Athena, was my refuge. With her, I was free, I was strong. I was celebrated for my skill, my connection, my passion. The stable became my sanctuary, the place where I could breathe, truly be myself. Away from the suffocating expectations of the Sterling household, my coach, a grizzled veteran named Coach Miller, was a blunt but brilliant man who saw my potential. Sarah, he'd often say, watching me guide Athena over a daunting jump, you got a fire in you, don't let anyone put it out, especially not those fancy pants types who don't know a damn thing about real grit. His words were a constant source of quiet encouragement, a counter-narrative to the one my in-laws so relentlessly spun. But the constant pressure chipped away at me, the snide remarks at dinner, the thinly veiled criticisms, the concerned phone calls. They were relentless. My professional life, too, became a battleground if I took on a particularly demanding architectural project, one that required long hours. My in-laws would express concern that I was overworking myself, suggesting it was affecting my domestic duties. They wanted me neatly boxed into their predetermined role, a decorative, supportive wife, without independent passions or ambitions that might overshadow their precious David. The financial aspect was another subtle lever of control. While David and I were financially independent, his career was heavily influenced by his father's connections. There were always veiled suggestions that if I didn't fall in line, it might negatively impact David's progression within his corporate sphere, which was intertwined with the Sterling family's extensive network. It was never a direct threat, but an implied consequence, a constant reminder of their pervasive power. I started to withdraw, to become more guarded. I stopped sharing my show-jumping achievements with them. I'd come home from a grueling training session, body aching but spirit soaring, only to face another round of dismissive comments, and the quiet joy would evaporate. I found myself making excuses to miss family events, choosing the solitude of the stables over the suffocating formality of their mansion. The tension seeped into my marriage. David, caught in the middle, became increasingly stressed. He loved me, I knew, but he was torn between his loyalty to his parents and his desire for my happiness. He would try to broker peace, to defend me to his parents, but his efforts were often half-hearted, stemming more from a desire to avoid conflict than from a genuine defense of my right to choose my own path. Sarah, can't you just dial it back a bit? He'd plead after a particularly difficult Sunday dinner. Just for a while. They're really worried about you. They think you're neglecting your health, our home. Neglecting what? David, I'd snap, my own frustration boiling over. My hobby actually keeps me incredibly fit, and our home is perfectly fine. My career is thriving. Why can't they just be happy for me? Why do they always have to find something to criticize, something to control? He would sigh, running a hand through his hair. It's just how they are, Sarah. They mean well. They just have high expectations for you, for us. Their expectations are a gilded cage. David, I'd retort, tears pricking my eyes. And I'm tired of being trapped in it. I'm tired of constantly shrinking myself to fit into their tiny, suffocating mold. The unspoken truth hung between us. He wasn't fighting for me hard enough. He wasn't willing to truly risk his parents' disapproval for my happiness. It was a painful realization that chipped away at the foundation of our love. But despite the constant chipping, the fire within me refused to be extinguished. Every dismissive comment, every snide remark, every push to conform, instead of breaking me, slowly, steadily, began to harden my resolve. It was like forging steel. Each blow, each attempt to bend me, only made me stronger, more determined to prove them wrong. I started to realize that their disapproval wasn't about me at all. It was about them. It was about their need for control, their fear of anything unconventional, their rigid adherence to a life they believed was perfect. My passion, my independence, my very existence outside their box, was a threat to their carefully constructed world. This quiet understanding was a turning point. It wasn't just a hobby anymore. It was a symbol of my autonomy, my right to define myself, my refusal to be erased, and as the qualifiers for the national team, then potentially the Olympics, loomed closer, the stakes grew impossibly high. This wasn't just about winning a medal. It was about winning my freedom, my identity, and perhaps even my marriage. The thought of standing on that podium, with a medal around my neck, and the world watching, became a powerful, driving force, not for their approval, but for my own vindication. For every moment they had made me feel small, for every dream they had tried to dismiss, for every time they called my passion a silly hobby. They had no idea what that silly hobby was about to become, and they had no idea the kind of fight they had just ignited within me. The decision to defy my in-laws wasn't a sudden, defiant roar, but a slow, burning ember that eventually ignited into an unshakable resolve. It had been building for years, fueled by countless Sunday dinners and thinly veiled criticisms. But the true turning point, the moment I realized I couldn't sacrifice my soul for their approval any longer, came during what should have been a celebratory occasion, David's promotion party. It was an opulent affair at the Sterling Country Club, all gleaming silver platters, hushed whispers, and the cloying scent of lilies. David had just been named senior vice president at his investment firm, a significant step up, largely facilitated by his father's extensive network. I was proud of him, truly. But the night quickly devolved into another subtle assault on my existence. Sarah, Eleanor purred, sidling up to me with a champagne flute in hand, her eyes appraising my designer dress, which I'd chosen meticulously to fit in. Darling, now that David's responsibilities have increased, and his need for a truly supportive wife is paramount, don't you think it's time to retire your riding boots, focus on more important things? She gestured vaguely around the ballroom, implying the vast social and domestic duties that awaited me. Richard, overhearing, chimed in, "Indeed, Sarah, we understand your little equestrian pursuit offers some exercise, but David needs a partner, not a stable hand. Perhaps you could join the club's charity committee. It's much more aligned with your position." I felt a familiar cold knot tighten in my stomach. Even at David's celebration, they managed to make it about my perceived inadequacy, about my silly hobby being a flaw. David, beaming from across the room as colleagues congratulated him, didn't notice. Or perhaps he chose not to. Later that night, the argument with David escalated into a full-blown crisis. "Why can't you just say something, David?" I pleaded, tears stinging my eyes. "Why do you let them talk to me like that? It's not just a hobby, it's my passion, it's who I am." He sighed, running a hand through his hair, his face etched with exhaustion. "Sarah, you know how they are. They mean well, they just want what's best for us. And honestly, the horses do take up a lot of time and money. Maybe if you just eased off a bit, just until I'm more established, it would make things so much easier." His words hit me like a physical blow. Make things easier. Easier for whom? For his parents. For him, never for me. It was always about what I needed to sacrifice, what I needed to give up to maintain their fragile peace. The realization washed over me with chilling clarity. David, though he loved me, was not going to be my shield. He was going to be another voice, albeit a gentler one, urging me into their golden cage. That night, lying awake next to David's quiet, even breathing, I made a decision, a silent, fierce vow to myself. I would not give up Athena. I would not give up show jumping. And I would no longer allow their disapproval to dictate my life. My passion wasn't a weakness, it was my strength, my anchor, my defiant act of self-preservation. The escalation of their control truly began after that, as the national show jumping trials loomed, requiring even more rigorous training and travel. My in-laws became increasingly aggressive in their tactics. They didn't just offer suggestions anymore. They started orchestrating events to directly conflict with my training schedule. "Sarah, darling, your father has arranged a crucial business trip for David to Tokyo," Eleanor announced one morning over coffee. "Of course, you'll be joining him. It's a wonderful opportunity to network, to support his work. It clashes with your little trial. Doesn't it, oh dear, what a shame." Her eyes, however, gleamed with malicious satisfaction. It wasn't a question, it was a command disguised as an invitation. A clear ultimatum: miss the national trials, or face their wrath and potentially jeopardize David's career. I felt a cold fury simmer within me. "Eleanor," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "David knows how important these trials are to me. I've been training for years for this. I will not be going to Tokyo." Her teacup clattered lightly in the saucer. "Excuse me." "You heard me," I continued, my gaze unwavering. "My commitment to my sport is just as valid as David's commitment to his career. I will not sacrifice my dreams for your social calendar or your attempts to control my life." The ensuing argument was brutal. David was caught in the crossfire, pleading with me to just reconsider for the sake of peace. His parents were enraged, accusing me of being selfish, disrespectful, and unfit to be a sterling wife. They even threatened to cut off David's allowance, something he still received, albeit nominally, despite his senior position, highlighting another subtle financial leash they held. "This is not about David's career or even his allowance." I finally exploded, tears streaming down my face, but this time they were tears of defiance, not despair. "This is about you constantly trying to crush anything that makes me me. Anything that gives me joy outside of your suffocating world. I will not let you do it anymore." I walked out of their mansion that day, leaving David to deal with his furious parents. It was a terrifying step, a complete break from the silent conformity I had practiced for so long. But it was also liberating. The air outside tasted sweeter, cleaner. The rift in my marriage grew wider. David and I still loved each other, but the unspoken tension was a suffocating blanket. He tried to compromise, suggesting I scale back my training or focus on smaller, local competitions. But I knew that was just another way to appease his parents, another step back into their control. My heart ached, but my resolve hardened. This wasn't just about my hobby, it was about my autonomy, my very identity. I began making significant sacrifices. My architectural projects, while still important, took a backseat to my training. I cut back on non-essential spending, knowing that my in-laws might make good on their threat to financially squeeze David. I started training earlier, sometimes before dawn, and later, long after sunset, using the quiet hours to avoid social obligations and to maximize my time with Athena. The stable became my sanctuary, my refuge from the relentless pressure. My coach, Miller, noticed the change in me. "You got a fire in your eyes now, Sarah," he observed one crisp morning as I put Athena through a challenging course. "Something's changed. You're not just riding, you're fighting." I confessed everything to him. The in-laws' pressure, David's struggles, the ultimatum. Miller listened, his craggy face thoughtful. "Good," he finally grunted. "Good, use that fire. They don't know what they're doing. They're making you stronger. Every time they tell you no, you just jump higher." He became more than a coach. He became my confidant, my anchor. He pushed me harder than ever, recognizing that the pressure I faced outside the arena needed an outlet, a focus. He taught me to channel my frustration, my anger, my quiet defiance into my riding, Athena. Sensing my renewed purpose, seemed to move with an even greater grace and power. Our connection deepened, becoming an almost symbiotic bond. My social life, outside of the stable, became almost non-existent. I declined invitations from David's family, citing training commitments or exhaustion. This only fueled their narrative of me being antisocial and obsessed. But I didn't care anymore. The peace of mind I found at the stable, the profound satisfaction of seeing my progress with Athena, far outweighed the superficial approval of my in-laws. The financial pressure did, indeed, materialize. My in-laws made it subtly known in David's professional circle that they were concerned about his marital distractions, causing some lucrative opportunities to mysteriously disappear. David, stressed and increasingly resentful, would sometimes lash out. "Sarah, I need you to understand," he'd say, his voice tight. "They're making things difficult for me at work. This isn't just about your writing anymore. It's affecting our livelihood." "And what about my livelihood, David?" I'd retort, my voice strained. "What about my sanity? Am I supposed to just abandon who I am? Just so your parents are pleased and your career path is perfectly smooth? Is that what our marriage is? A tool for their approval?" These arguments were devastating. They chipped away at the love we shared, replacing it with resentment and a painful distance. I knew David was trapped by his loyalty and fear of his parents, but I also felt profoundly alone in my fight. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was making the right choice, if my passion was worth the fracturing of my marriage. But then I'd think of Athena, her warm breath on my cheek, her powerful muscles working in unison with mine as we cleared a daunting jump. I'd think of Coach Miller's gruff but unwavering belief in me, and I'd remember the suffocating feeling of being trapped in the Sterling's gilded cage. I knew, deep in my soul, that giving up my passion would be giving up on myself, and that was a price I was no longer willing to pay. The national trials were grueling. 3 days of intense competition, each jump a test of skill, courage, and the unbreakable bond with Athena. My in-laws, true to form, didn't attend. They were on a cruise, David informed me, a subtle dig that they chose leisure over supporting my dream. David himself was there for some of the events, but his presence felt strained, his eyes constantly darting around, as if expecting his parents to appear and scold him. Despite the emotional turmoil, I rode with a fierce focus. Every criticism, every dismissive comment, every attempt to make me feel small, I channeled it into my performance. It became fuel. The roar of the crowd, the thud of Athena's hooves, the precise rhythm of our movements. It was all a symphony of defiance. And then, it happened. On the final day, after a flawless Grand Prix round, the announcement came, my name. Sarah Sterling and Athena have qualified for the U.S. Olympic equestrian team. The cheer from the small crowd of supporters, mostly fellow riders and stable hands, was deafening. Coach Miller, his face split in a rare, beaming smile, clapped me on the back. "You did it, kid. You actually did it." Tears streamed down my face. Tears of triumph, relief, and a profound, quiet vindication. I hugged Athena, burying my face in her mane, her warm coat smelling of sweat and victory. David rushed over, his face pale, but with a flicker of genuine pride. He hugged me tightly. "You did it, Sarah, you really did it." But even in that moment of unparalleled triumph, a shadow loomed. The Olympics, the global stage. This wasn't just a silly hobby anymore. This was serious. This was public. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that my in-laws would not be pleased. Their response would be swift, ruthless, and designed to bring me back down to earth. No matter how high I had soared, the qualification was a victory, but it was also a declaration of war, and I was ready for it. Qualifying for the Olympics should have been a moment of unadulterated joy, a peak experience after years of relentless dedication, and for a brief, glorious moment, it was hugging Athena, feeling David's awkward but sincere embrace, seeing Coach Miller's rare, proud smile. It was everything. But the high was fleeting, quickly overshadowed by the chilling certainty of what was to come, the inevitable, devastating reaction from the Sterlings. My in-laws, true to form, didn't call to congratulate me, not a single text, not an email. Their silence was louder than any shout, more damning than any direct insult. It was their ultimate weapon, the deliberate withholding of validation, a tactic designed to make my triumph feel hollow, insignificant. David, however, was clearly torn. He tried to bridge the gap, bringing it up carefully during a rare moment of quiet. My parents, they know. Sarah, he said, avoiding my eyes. They're just processing it. It's a lot for them to take in. A lot to take in, I scoffed, the bitterness sharp in my voice. That their daughter-in-law dared to achieve something extraordinary outside their rigid little box. That my silly hobby just became an Olympic dream. What's there to process? David, it's called success. He winced. They think it's unseemly. For a Sterling, all that public attention. They think it distracts from our family reputation. My jaw dropped. Unseemly. A distraction, David. Millions of people dream of this. This is a global stage. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about representing our country. But his parents' narrative was deeply ingrained in him. He was a product of their relentless conditioning, and their expectations weighed on him like an invisible shroud. He loved me, I truly believe that, but his loyalty was hopelessly entangled with his fear of their disapproval. The real escalation began a week later, when the local news caught wind of my qualification. A small segment aired, featuring a clip of me and Athena jumping, a brief interview about my journey, and the announcement of my Olympic berth. It was positive, inspiring, and exactly what the U.S. Olympic Committee wanted. For my in-laws, it was a public relations nightmare. The phone rang ceaselessly, not for me, but for David, and then, for me, from his frantic relatives. Sarah, what is this all about? My mother-in-law, Eleanor, demanded, her voice an icy blade on the phone. This spectacle, it's an embarrassment. We're being asked about it at the club. People are talking. People are talking because I qualified for the Olympics. Eleanor, I stated calmly, refusing to be drawn into her panic. It's an honor, not an embarrassment. An honor, she shrieked. You're a Sterling now, Sarah. Our family name is associated with prestige, with corporate success, with quiet dignity, not with women jumping horses on national television. It's a vulgar display. It detracts from David's career. It makes us look common. That word, common, stung more than any other. It was their ultimate insult. Their way of dismissing anything that didn't fit into their narrow, elitist worldview. The pressure mounted. They started making veiled threats, mostly through David. Your father is reconsidering some of David's upcoming deals. Sarah, he believes David needs to focus without distractions at home, Eleanor would imply. Perhaps you could issue a statement, explaining this as a temporary endeavor, something you'll retire from after the games. Or better yet, simply withdraw. Say you've had a change of heart, for the good of the family. Withdraw. They wanted me to withdraw from the Olympics. The audacity was breathtaking. David, unfortunately, became their unwilling messenger. He'd come home from work, his shoulders slumped, his face pale. Sarah, please. They're making things impossible. They've hinted that Dad might pull his financial backing from the new venture I'm trying to launch. They're putting so much pressure on me. My heart ached for him. Truly, he was a good man, trapped. But my empathy for him was warring with my profound sense of betrayal. And what about me, David? I asked, my voice trembling with suppressed fury. What about the years of work, the sacrifices, the dream? Am I supposed to sacrifice all of that, just so your father doesn't withdraw an allowance he shouldn't even be giving you at your age? He flinched. It's not just an allowance, Sarah, it's about opportunities, connections. They control so much, and they control you. David, I retorted, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. They control you, and they expect to control me too. I refuse to be controlled. I refuse to be erased. Our marriage, already strained, was now at breaking point. We were living under the same roof, but in separate worlds, separated by a chasm of unspoken resentment and fear. He couldn't understand my need for autonomy, my fierce refusal to conform, and I couldn't understand his inability to stand up to the very people who were systematically dismantling my spirit. The situation became even more insidious when they tried to interfere with my training. They couldn't directly stop me from going to the stables, but they could make it difficult. My car, which I had just gotten serviced, suddenly developed a series of mysterious problems: flat tires, engine stalls, lost keys. I suspected Amelia's influence, even from afar. Or perhaps someone they had hired. It forced me to rely on taxis and ride shares, eating into my already strained budget and precious training time. My coach, Miller, became my unwavering rock. He saw the toll their actions were taking on me. But he also saw my resolve. "Don't let them get into your head, kid," he'd advise, watching me work with Athena. "They're trying to break your spirit, but you're tougher than they know. Use it. Use their anger as fuel." He helped me find a small, secluded stable further upstate, away from the prying eyes and subtle sabotage of my in-laws. It was a longer drive, more inconvenient, but it offered peace. There, amidst the quiet beauty of the countryside, I trained harder than ever. Every early morning, every late night, every aching muscle was a defiant act, a silent scream of no to their control. The media attention, initially a trickle, became a steady stream as the Olympics drew closer. My story, the architect who secretly trained to become an Olympic equestrian, became a compelling human interest piece. News crews wanted interviews, magazines wanted features. This visibility, while stressful, became an unexpected shield the more public I became. The harder it was for my in-laws to quietly pressure me or to discredit me without drawing even more unwanted attention to themselves. But they still tried. Their ultimate weapon was yet to be deployed. The U.S. Olympic team held a formal send-off press conference a week before we were due to fly out. It was a grand affair in a downtown hotel ballroom, filled with flashing cameras, reporters, and proud families. David was there, looking uncomfortable but supportive. Standing beside me, my parents, though, were conspicuously absent. Just as I was about to step up to the podium, a commotion broke out near the back. My heart sank. I recognized the determined set of Eleanor Sterling's jaw, followed closely by a grim-faced Richard. They marched forward, pushing past reporters, their eyes fixed on me like laser beams. "Sarah," Eleanor cried out, her voice loud enough to carry across the room, deliberately designed to grab attention. "We need to speak with you immediately." The cameras immediately swiveled towards them. Reporters, sensing drama, leaned in. My blood ran cold. This was it. Their public humiliation attempt. "Eleanor," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "This is a press conference for the Olympic team. It's not the time or place for family discussions." "Oh, but it is, dear," she retorted, her eyes blazing with a righteous fury. "This is precisely the time and place. The world needs to know the truth, that this entire spectacle is a reckless and irresponsible endeavor, that you are neglecting your duties as a wife, as a member of our family, that David's career is suffering because of your selfish obsession." Richard stepped forward, his voice booming. "We demand that you withdraw, Sarah, for the sake of the family name, for David's future. This is not something a Sterling does." Reporters gasped. Cameras flashed furiously. Microphones were thrust towards my in-laws, eager for the juicy scandal. David, standing beside me, looked utterly mortified, his face a ghastly shade of white. "Neglecting my duties," I repeated, my voice rising, fueled by years of suppressed anger. "You call representing my country on the world stage neglecting my duties. You call achieving a lifelong dream selfish obsession. What you call duty, I call a golden cage. What you call family, I call a relentless attempt to control and diminish me." My words were sharp. Cutting through the stunned silence, I looked directly at Eleanor and Richard, my gaze unwavering. "For years, you have belittled my passion, dismissed my achievements, and tried to force me into a mold you created for me. You called my sport a silly hobby. You tried to manipulate David, to financially pressure him, all to get me to quit. You even sabotaged my car to stop me from training." Thinking I wouldn't notice, a collective gasp swept through the room. The reporters scribbled furiously. My in-laws recoiled, their faces paling further. The accusation of car sabotage, so direct and public, caught them completely off guard. "This is outrageous slander," Richard thundered, regaining some composure. "We would never. This woman is clearly unhinged." "Unhinged," I retorted, a defiant smile touching my lips. "No, Richard. I'm just finally free from your judgment, free from your control. My silly hobby has brought me here, to the Olympics. It has given me strength, purpose, and a voice, and I will not apologize for it. Not to you, not to anyone. I turn my back on them, facing the sea of flashing cameras and stunned reporters. My voice, now calm and resolute, carried over the hushed room. My name is Sarah. I am an architect, a dedicated equestrian, and I am incredibly proud to represent my country at the upcoming Olympic Games. My journey has been challenging, but it has taught me the invaluable lesson that you must always, always believe in yourself, even when those closest to you try to tear you down. Don't ever let anyone tell you your dreams are silly, or that your passions are distractions, because sometimes those silly hobbies can take you all the way to the top. A spontaneous round of applause erupted from some of the reporters and a few members of the Olympic Committee. My in-laws stood frozen, utterly humiliated, their attempt to publicly shame me having backfired spectacularly. David, though still pale, was looking at me with a newfound admiration, a flicker of pride that made my heart ache with a different kind of hope. The confrontation was brutal, exhausting, but exhilarating. I had finally shattered their narrative, exposed their manipulation, and done so on a public stage. The old Sarah, who would have crumbled under their gaze, was gone. In her place stood a woman who had found her voice, her power, and her undeniable right to shine. The Olympics were just days away, and I was going there, not as a sterling wife, but as Sarah, an Olympian, defiant and free. The raw electric energy of the press conference lingered in the air long after my in-laws, utterly defeated, had slunk away, the cheers, the flashing cameras, the stunned faces of the Sterling family's cronies. It was a heady cocktail of vindication and liberation. I had stood my ground, exposed their toxic control, and done so on a public stage, under the gaze of the world's media. The old Sarah, who would have crumbled under such pressure, was gone. In her place stood a woman forged in defiance, ready to face whatever came next. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind. Reporters swarmed me, eager for more details, for the scandal of a prominent family publicly disowning an Olympian. My coach, Miller, and the U.S. Olympic Committee's press liaison quickly stepped in, shielding me from the onslaught. No further comments on personal matters, the liaison stated firmly, ushering me away from the microphones. Sarah is here to focus on the games, but the story was out, and it spread like wildfire within hours. Clips of the press conference, focusing on my defiant speech, were all over social media. The headlines screamed, "Olympic hopeful accuses in-laws of sabotage and control. Family feud rocks equestrian world." It was chaotic, sensational, and entirely beyond my control. My phone blew up, texts from friends, messages from distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years, all expressing shock, support, or thinly veiled judgment. David's phone, I imagined, was doing the same. He approached me later that evening, his face pale and drawn. After the press conference chaos had somewhat subsided, we were in a quiet corner of the hotel lobby, the buzz of reporters still audible from outside. "Sarah," he began, his voice strained. "My parents, they're furious, beyond furious. They're calling it a public betrayal. They said you've ruined the family name." I met his gaze, my own eyes tired but resolute. "They ruined the family name, David, by trying to control me, by dismissing my passion, and by trying to publicly humiliate me. I simply spoke the truth, a truth they forced me to speak on a public platform." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know, I saw it. Sarah, they went too far. But what now? It's a mess. My father is threatening to cut off all financial ties, to disinherit me even, if I don't condemn your actions publicly. This was the core of their manipulation, their ultimate lever. David's financial dependence, his career progression, his very identity, were inextricably linked to his parents' approval. "And what will you do, David?" I asked, my voice soft but firm, a test of his loyalty, a question that would define our future. "Will you condemn me? Will you choose their control over our marriage?" over my dream. He looked away, his jaw tight. I don't know. Sarah, it's just so much. This is my career, my future, everything I've worked for. The painful truth hung in the air. His comfort, his security, his parents' approval mattered more to him than my unwavering pursuit of my authentic self. My heart ached, a deep, profound sadness settling over me. I had hoped, truly hoped, that seeing their blatant malice, witnessing my defiance, would finally push him to choose me, to choose us. But the chains of his upbringing were too strong. Then you have a choice to make. David, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Choose them and their control, or choose me, and a life of authenticity and freedom. But you cannot have both. Not anymore. He didn't answer. His silence was his answer. And in that moment, I knew, with a painful certainty, that our marriage, already fractured, had finally broken beyond repair. My Olympic dream, though exhilarating, had forced an undeniable wedge between us, exposing the fundamental incompatibilities that had always simmered beneath the surface of our love. The next few days were a blur of intense training, media obligations, and the quiet, agonizing unraveling of my personal life. I informed David that I would be staying at the Olympic training facility full-time until the Games, giving us space, but also making it clear I was choosing my path. He didn't object. He didn't offer to visit. The silence from him was as deafening as the public outcry from his parents. My parents, on the other hand, my actual mother and father, called me daily. They were appalled by the Sterling's behavior, genuinely concerned for me, and overwhelmingly proud. They, unlike my in-laws, saw my passion as a strength, my defiance as courage. Their unwavering support became my new emotional anchor, a testament to the healthy, unconditional love I had always received from them. Sarah, we saw the news, my dad said, his voice thick with emotion. You were incredible. Don't you dare let them get to you. We're behind you every step of the way. We always knew you were special, darling, my mother added, her voice choked with tears. You always had that fire. Don't let anyone put it out. Their love was a balm to my wounded spirit. It reminded me what true family felt like, a stark contrast to the transactional love of the Sterlings. It was empowering, giving me the strength to push through the emotional turmoil. The team flew out to the Olympic host city. The atmosphere was electric. Athletes from around the world, all united by their pursuit of excellence, their dreams palpable in the air. For the first time in years, I felt like I truly belonged. The public drama of my in-laws faded into the background, replaced by the intense focus of competition. I dedicated myself completely to my training, to Athena, to the singular goal of performing my best. Every morning, I was up before dawn, running, conditioning, then spending hours at the equestrian center, meticulously practicing every jump, every maneuver. The physical exertion was immense, but it was nothing compared to the mental fortitude required to block out the noise, the doubts, the lingering pain of my fractured marriage, and the public spectacle my in-laws had created. My coach, Miller, was a master at keeping me grounded. Forget them, Sarah, he'd say, watching me warm up. Forget the headlines, forget the family drama. Right now, it's just you and Athena. That's all that matters. Focus on the moment. Focus on the ride. He understood that my sport wasn't just about physical skill. It was about mental clarity, about the unbreakable bond with my horse. It was about trusting myself, trusting Athena, and letting go of everything that weighed me down. The days blurred into a rigorous routine training, team meetings, media obligations, and the quiet, intense preparation for the biggest moment of my life. I learned to compartmentalize, to put the pain of my personal life into a separate box, allowing myself to access only the raw, burning passion that had brought me here. The opening ceremony was an overwhelming, awe-inspiring experience. Marching into the stadium, surrounded by thousands of athletes, bathed in the roar of the crowd, it was surreal. I saw my parents in the stands, waving wildly, their faces beaming with pride. David was not with them. His absence, though painful, confirmed my suspicions. He had chosen his parents, he had chosen their peace, and in a strange way, that clarity, though heartbreaking, was also liberating. It forced me to fully embrace my independence. As the equestrian events drew closer, the anticipation became almost unbearable. My heart pounded with a mix of nerves and adrenaline. This wasn't just another competition. This was the culmination of a lifetime of dedication. A defiant stand against everyone who had ever told me I wasn't enough, that my dreams were silly. The day of the individual show jumping final dawned bright and clear. The atmosphere at the equestrian park was electric, a buzzing hive of excitement and tension. Millions around the world would be watching. My in-laws, I knew, would be watching too, probably from their mansion, hoping for my failure, hoping for their narrative to be validated. I spent the morning in quiet preparation, grooming Athena, talking to her in low, soothing tones, feeling her powerful presence, her calm, steady energy. She was my partner, my confidant, the one constant in a turbulent world. With her, I felt invincible. Coach Miller gave me a final pep talk, his gruff voice laced with emotion. "This is it, kid. All those early mornings, all those sacrifices, all those times they tried to knock you down. It all comes down to this. Ride your ride. Ride for yourself. Ride for Athena. And show 'em what that silly hobby can really do." Walking into the arena was a sensory overload. The roar of the crowd, the flashing lights, the imposing height of the jumps. It was breathtaking. I took a deep breath, centered myself, and mounted Athena. We entered the arena, our names echoing through the loudspeakers. My focus narrowed. The crowd, the cameras, the family drama. It all faded away. It was just me, Athena, and the course. The jumps loomed. Formidable barriers, but they also felt like opportunities. Each one was a metaphor for the obstacles I had overcome. The first few jumps were smooth, rhythmic. Athena moved with grace and power, her muscles rippling beneath me. I guided her with a quiet confidence, our movements perfectly synchronized. We were a single unit, a testament to years of unwavering trust and connection. As we approached the more challenging combinations, the silence in the arena became almost palpable, broken only by the thud of hooves and the quick intake of breath from the crowd. The water jump, a wide, glittering expanse designed to unnerve both horse and rider. We cleared it effortlessly, a spray of water glistening in the sunlight. Then came the final line, a series of daunting oxers and verticals, requiring pinpoint precision and immense courage. This was where champions were made, or dreams were shattered. I felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, but also a profound sense of calm. This wasn't just about technique, it was about heart. I leaned into Athena, whispered encouragement, and we soared, over the triple combination, over the final. Towering vertical, a collective gasp from the crowd, followed by a roar. We landed cleanly, no faults. The announcer's voice boomed through the loudspeakers, his excitement barely contained, and a perfect clear round for Sarah Sterling of the United States. An absolutely flawless performance that puts her in the lead. A wave of euphoria washed over me, so potent it almost brought me to my knees. The crowd erupted, a deafening roar of applause and cheers. I patted Athena's neck, tears blurring my vision. We had done it. We had truly done it. The next few minutes were a blur. Other riders attempted the course, but none could match our flawless performance. One by one, their scores were announced, each one confirming my lead. And then, the final announcement came. The voice, trembling with excitement, proclaimed, and the gold medal in individual show jumping goes to Sarah Sterling of the United States of America. The roar was deafening. Confetti cannons exploded, showering the arena in a cascade of gold and silver. Tears streamed down my face, mingling with sweat. I dismounted Athena, wrapped my arms around her neck, sobbing into her mane. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph, a visceral release of years of pressure, pain, and quiet defiance. I looked up at the stands, searching for my parents. They were there, standing, cheering, tears streaming down their own faces. My true family. And somewhere, I knew, my in-laws were watching watching their silly hobby win an Olympic gold medal. Their silence, their disdain, their attempts to control, it had all culminated in this moment. A global, undeniable vindication. Standing on that podium, the heavy gold medal around my neck, the national anthem swelling around me, was the most empowering moment of my life. The cameras flashed, capturing my beaming face, my tears of joy. This wasn't just a medal, it was a symbol of my freedom, my authenticity, my unbreakable spirit. It was the ultimate answer to every single person who had ever tried to diminish me. My silly hobby had taken me all the way to the top. And I was just getting started. Standing on that Olympic podium, the heavy gold medal a cool, exhilarating weight around my neck, was an out-of-body experience. The roar of the crowd, the flash of 1,000 cameras, the soaring notes of the national anthem, it all converged into a singular, perfect moment of triumph and vindication. Every dismissive comment, every snide remark, every instance of gaslighting, every single time my in-laws had called my passion a silly hobby, they were all utterly obliterated by the undeniable glint of that gold medal. This wasn't just a win for me. It was a win for every person who had ever been told their dreams were too big, too unconventional, or simply not enough. As I stepped down from the podium, the world became a blur of interviews, congratulations, and flashing lights. Reporters clamored for my story, not just the athletic one, but the personal one. The family drama from the pre-games press conference had become a viral sensation, and now, with an Olympic gold medal, it was a story with an undeniable, golden ending. My first interview after the medal ceremony was with a major sports broadcaster. The interviewer, a seasoned veteran, looked at me with an almost reverent awe. "Sarah, an incredible performance. Flawless. Can you describe what this moment feels like? And perhaps address some of the chatter surrounding your journey here?" I took a deep breath, clutching the medal in my hand. This was my platform. This was my chance to speak my truth. Not with anger, but with the quiet power of undeniable success. "This moment," I began, my voice clear and steady, "feels like pure joy. It's the culmination of years of hard work, dedication, and an unbreakable bond with my incredible horse, Athena." I paused, then continued, meeting the camera's gaze directly. As for the chatter, my journey to this podium was indeed unique. There were many who doubted me, many who dismissed my passion as a silly hobby. They believed my focus should have been on other things, on conforming to certain expectations. But I believed in myself, I believed in Athena, and I refused to let anyone else define my worth or dictate my dreams. I didn't name my in-laws explicitly, but the message was clear. I spoke about the importance of perseverance, of trusting your own path, and of defying expectations. To anyone out there who's been told their passion isn't serious enough, or that their dreams are silly, don't listen. Hold on to that dream, nurture it, because sometimes that silly hobby can take you to the most incredible places and prove your strength to the world, and more importantly, to yourself. The interview went viral. My words resonated with millions, turning me into an overnight symbol of resilience against familial pressure. Messages flooded my social media, countless stories from people who had faced similar dismissals, finding inspiration in my defiance. It was overwhelming, humbling, and incredibly empowering. And my in-laws, oh, they were watching, David later told me. They had gathered in front of their large-screen TV, expecting to see me fail, or perhaps to see me give a meek, apologetic interview instead. They saw me, gold medal glinting, radiating strength and defiance, speaking about them without naming them, yet leaving no doubt as to who I was referring to. Their reaction, as reported by David, was a mix of stunned silence, disbelief, and a furious, desperate attempt to reclaim the narrative. Eleanor, with her usual flair for the dramatic, tried to call me, but I didn't answer. I had set my boundaries, and I was holding them firm. The next day, a statement was released by their publicist, a clumsy attempt at damage control. It spoke of their immense pride in my achievement, their unwavering support, and how they had always encouraged Sarah's unique talents. It was a transparent lie, easily seen through by anyone who had followed the story. Or indeed, anyone who knew them, the media, no fools, largely ignored it or lampooned it. David, however, was caught in the eye of the storm. He flew out to join me after the medal ceremony, his face a mixture of exhaustion and profound awe. He had witnessed the entirety of my journey, from the public humiliation at the press conference to the golden triumph on the podium, and something had finally, irrevocably, shifted within him. "Sarah," he said, finding me in a quiet corner of the Olympic Village, his voice hoarse. He looked utterly drained, but there was a new light in his eyes, a depth of understanding I hadn't seen before. I am so sorry for everything, for not standing up to them, for letting them treat you that way, for not being the husband you deserved." Tears welled up in his eyes, genuine tears of regret and remorse. He took my hands, his grip firm. "When I saw you on that podium, with the medal, and when I heard you speak, I realized everything. They were wrong. Sarah, completely wrong. And I was wrong for letting them dictate our lives, for letting them diminish you." He paused, taking a shaky breath. I told them I wouldn't let them control my life anymore. I told them I was choosing you, and if they couldn't accept that, then I was prepared to walk away from everything they offered. My heart, which had been so guarded, so weary, softened. This was the moment I had yearned for, prayed for years. Not just an apology, but a definitive stand, a choice for me, for our future, over his parents' suffocating control. "It won't be easy, Sarah," he continued. "They're furious. They've already threatened to cut me off financially, to blacklist me in our industry, but I don't care. I've realized that their support came with an unbearable price. I want a life with you, a life of authenticity, not one dictated by their approval." His sincerity, his vulnerability, was overwhelming. I threw my arms around him, burying my face in his shoulder. "Thank you, David," I whispered, tears of relief and hope streaming down my face. "Thank you for finally seeing. Thank you for choosing us." His journey of breaking free from his parents' control was just beginning, and it would be a long and arduous one. He faced immense pressure, professional setbacks, and bitter condemnations from his parents. But for the first time, he faced it with courage and clarity, knowing he had made the right choice. Our marriage, though severely tested, began to heal piece by painful piece, built on a new foundation of honesty, mutual respect, and a shared commitment to defending our autonomy. The Olympic gold medal wasn't just a sporting achievement. It was a powerful catalyst for change in every aspect of my life. The immense media attention, once a source of anxiety, became a platform for advocacy. I used my newfound voice to speak out about emotional manipulation in families, about the importance of mental well-being in high-pressure environments, and about supporting athletes' personal journeys. I became a spokesperson for several organizations dedicated to empowering young women in sports and for mental health awareness. My in-laws, desperate to save face, made one last attempt to publicly connect with me. They sent a large, ostentatious floral arrangement to my hotel suite, accompanied by a handwritten note, thick with feigned sentiment. "Darling Sarah, we are simply overflowing with pride for your incredible achievement. We always knew you had it in you. Do call us when you return. We must celebrate properly." I looked at the arrangement, then at the note. The blatant hypocrisy, the shameless attempt to appropriate my success, was almost comical. I picked up the phone and called a local women's shelter. "I have a large floral arrangement I'd like to donate," I told them. The note I crumpled and threw directly into the trash. My boundaries were now as unyielding as the gold medal around my neck. Upon returning home, the media frenzy continued. I granted interviews, attended galas, and signed endorsement deals. My silly hobby was now a multi-million-dollar career, and my independence was absolute. David, having weathered the initial storm from his parents, found a new job in a different firm, one not tied to his father's network, where his talents were recognized on their own merit. It was a smaller firm, initially, but it was a path to true professional autonomy. and he embraced it with a newfound vigor. My relationship with my parents, my actual parents, flourished. They were my biggest cheerleaders, sharing in my joy and offering unwavering emotional support. They became regular fixtures at my public appearances, their proud smiles a stark contrast to the bitter resentment of the Sterlings. Life settled into a new rhythm. I continued my architectural work. Now with a renewed sense of purpose and creativity, my work with Athena continued, though with less intense competition and more focus on training young riders and fostering the human-animal bond. I poured my energy into mentorship, into inspiring others to pursue their passions, no matter the obstacles. The journey taught me that true strength isn't about never falling, but about rising every single time you're knocked down. It taught me that genuine love accepts you for who you are, without conditions or attempts at control. It taught me that boundaries are not walls that keep people out, but invisible lines that protect your inner peace and allow you to define your own space for growth. My silly hobby had given me more than an Olympic gold medal. It had given me freedom. It had given me self-worth. It had given me my voice, and it had allowed me to build a life, a marriage, and a family dynamic that was truly, authentically mine, forged not in the shadow of expectation, but in the brilliant light of my own defiant dreams. It's been almost 3 years since that extraordinary Olympic win, 3 years since I stood on that podium, a gold medal heavy around my neck, defying every expectation and shattering every dismissive word my in-laws had ever uttered. Life, as they say, doesn't just go back to normal after something like that. It transforms. And for me, that transformation has been nothing short of profound. The immediate aftermath of the Olympics was a dizzying whirlwind. The media frenzy continued for months, turning me from an obscure architect with a silly hobby into a household name. Endorsement deals poured in, not just from equestrian brands, but from major lifestyle and luxury companies. My silly hobby had become a lucrative career path, far exceeding any financial expectations my in-laws had ever imposed through David. I signed book deals, became a motivational speaker, and even had a documentary series greenlit about my journey. The financial independence I achieved was absolute, and for the first time, I felt truly free from the subtle, controlling strings my in-laws had always tried to attach to me and David. Professionally, my architectural career also flourished, but on my terms, I scaled back my involvement in large corporate projects, instead focusing on smaller, more passion-driven designs, particularly equestrian facilities and sustainable, community-focused developments. My Olympic fame gave me the luxury of choice, allowing me to pursue work that aligned with my values. Rather than just chasing profit or approval, the creative satisfaction was immense. My relationship with Athena, my magnificent mare, remains the heart of my world. While I no longer compete at the Olympic level, we still train regularly. Maintaining our deep bond, I've shifted my focus to mentoring young, aspiring riders, particularly girls who face similar pressures to conform or abandon their dreams. I often bring Athena to clinics and workshops, showing them the power of perseverance and the profound connection between human and horse. Seeing their eyes light up, knowing I can be a source of inspiration, is a reward far greater than any medal. The most significant and complex transformation, however, has been in my personal life, especially with my family. Amelia, my sister-in-law, has completely receded from my life. After her public humiliation at the Olympic press conference and her family's subsequent distancing, she spiraled further. David told me she eventually moved out of state, cutting off contact with everyone, including her parents. I hear sporadic updates through distant relatives. She struggled to maintain stable employment or relationships. There's no gloating on my part, no sense of malicious victory, just a quiet, poignant sadness for what could have been, and a firm resolve to maintain the unbreakable boundaries that now protect my peace. Her path is hers to navigate, and mine is one of clear, well-defined separation. It's the ultimate act of self-preservation. Knowing when to release toxic ties for your own well-being. My relationship with David, while forever marked by the trials we endured, has found a new, stronger equilibrium. After his courageous stand against his parents, he faced significant professional backlash. His father's threats were real. He was indeed blacklisted from several lucrative deals and opportunities within their traditional network. It was incredibly hard for him, forcing him to step outside his comfort zone and build a career entirely on his own merit. He started working for a smaller, independent investment firm where his talent was genuinely recognized, free from the shadow of his family's influence. This struggle, ironically, was the best thing that could have happened to him. It stripped away his dependence, forced him to forge his own identity, and taught him the true meaning of autonomy. He emerged from it a stronger, more authentic man. Our marriage, rebuilt on a foundation of honesty, shared values, and mutual respect, is now deeper and more resilient than ever. We communicate openly, support each other fiercely, and understand that our individual well-being is paramount. He no longer feels compelled to mediate with his parents or seek their approval. He is truly my partner, an equal, walking beside me, not a man caught between two warring factions. His transformation has been as profound, in its own way, as mine. As for my in-laws, Richard and Eleanor Sterling, their public image was irrevocably tarnished. Their clumsy attempts to claim credit for my Olympic success were widely mocked. The story of their disdain and attempted sabotage became a cautionary tale in their exclusive social circles. They lost some face, some influence, and certainly some of the aura of unquestionable authority they once wielded. Their initial reaction to David's defiance was, predictably, fury and disinheritance. But over time, as David built his own successful career and as I continued to shine on a global stage, their bitterness slowly morphed into a grudging, unspoken respect. They saw David's genuine happiness, his newfound independence. They saw my continued success, my grace under pressure, my unwavering self-possession, the sheer, undeniable evidence of my triumph, achieved despite them, became impossible to ignore. They never offered a direct, full apology to me for their years of emotional abuse. That level of introspection and humility was beyond them. But their attempts to manipulate dwindled. Their criticisms ceased. Now, when we see them at family gatherings, which are far less frequent and always on my terms, there's a different dynamic. There's a certain awkward politeness, a subtle deferral to my newfound status. They might even offer a strained compliment about my latest project or a recent interview. It's not a loving embrace, but it's a silent acknowledgement of my undeniable success and my unyielding boundaries. It's a peace built on my terms, not theirs. I don't seek their approval anymore. I simply exist in my power, and they have to adjust to that reality. The lessons I've learned from this incredible journey are invaluable, and I often share them in my public speaking engagements, particularly with young people. Firstly, your passion is your power. Don't ever let anyone, especially those closest to you, convince you that your dreams are silly or impractical. Your passions are the windows to your soul, the fuel for your purpose. Nurture them fiercely, protect them from cynicism, and let them guide you, even when the path is unconventional. My silly hobby didn't just win a medal, it won me my freedom. Secondly, boundaries are not walls, they are foundations. They are the invisible lines that protect your self-worth, your mental health, and your energy. Establishing clear boundaries, especially with toxic family members, is an act of radical self-love. It's okay to say no. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to redefine what family means to you, prioritizing health and respect over blood ties. My boundaries with Amelia were absolute, and with my in-laws, they were clearly defined. This allowed me to heal and thrive. Thirdly, trust your intuition. For years, my gut told me Amelia's actions were malicious, that my in-laws' concern was control, but I allowed others to gaslight me into doubting myself. Learning to listen to that inner voice, that gut feeling, is crucial. It's your internal compass, guiding you towards what feels right and away from what harms you. Fourthly, vulnerability can be strength. Sharing my story, exposing the family dynamics, was terrifying, but it was also incredibly liberating. It allowed me to connect with others who had similar experiences, and it transformed my personal pain into a source of inspiration for countless people. Authenticity, even when messy, resonates. And finally, vindication often comes in unexpected forms. I didn't set out to humiliate my in-laws or gain global fame. I just wanted to ride my horse, to pursue my passion, and to prove my own worth to myself. But by staying true to my authentic self, by refusing to shrink, by daring to shine, the universe delivered a powerful, undeniable vindication that transcended any personal desire for revenge. My Olympic gold medal wasn't just a symbol of athletic achievement, it was a gleaming monument to my unwavering spirit, a beacon of hope for anyone struggling to be truly seen and accepted. My life now is one of profound fulfillment. I wake up each day grateful for the challenges I faced, because they led me to this place of strength, clarity, and purpose. I have a loving, supportive marriage. I pursue work that energizes my soul. I have incredible friends and a supportive community. And I have Athena, my silent partner, who taught me the true meaning of trust and partnership. The path to self-liberation is rarely easy. It's often fraught with pain, difficult confrontations, and moments of intense self-doubt. But the reward, the feeling of standing truly, unapologetically in your own power, is worth every single step. My silly hobby didn't just win an Olympic gold medal, it won me my entire life back. And for that, I will be forever grateful. Thank you for allowing me to share this journey with you. If you've ever had to fight for your dreams against the odds, or if you've had to redefine what family means on your own terms, please share your story in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button if my story resonated with you. And remember, never let anyone dim your light. Go for gold, in whatever form it takes for you.